Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hello, everybody. Hello, Marina.
Hello, Richard.
Back from America.
I am back from America.
Did you do anything when you were out there?
I just mostly did podcasting, actually. Yeah.
So, Trump won the American election. I'm so...
What?
If anybody is still got to catch up on it, I'm so sorry to be a spoiler. Should have said at the beginning there'll be spoilers.
There will be spoilers.
There are lessons to learn for the media. But most importantly, how was your podcast with Rory, Alistair, Dominic Sandbrook and Anthony Scaramucci?
It was so interesting. I learned such a lot. I did learn such a lot. I did learn such a lot because, I mean, you sit there and you've done lots of live stuff before, doing sort of 4 hours of live and then another 4 hours of live, like in the middle of the night, and then all over again. Each one, I felt like, I understand more what this is now. And
Did you do 3 lots of 4 hours?
Yeah, no. The last one was like 90 minutes or something.
Yeah, like you could be bothered at that
point. But by that stage, I was like, I understand what this is now. Now I could do much more of this. I have to say, it was very interesting having a sort of what I call a glimpse into the other podcast marriages within our stable
really?
and how
That's fun.
how they all work. I missed you a lot, Richard.
Oh, that's fun. Now, the thing that fascinates me about that podcast you did is there's a slight kind of schism there. So you've got Alistair, Rory and Anthony Scaramucci, who are from traditional media, and you've got you and Dominic Sandbrook, who are looking at it from a very different angle. And it feels to me that the future of television is going to have to come far more from the Marina Hydes and Dominic Sandbrook and far less from the traditional adversarial side of politics. I think that one of the things that we've learnt over this last election cycle is that people are not getting their news from where we used to get the news from when we were kids, which is traditional media, traditional broadcast, and a Tory and a Labour person arguing with each other on a traditional interview show. That's where we used to get our news from and our political understanding from, and that's, I think, a lot of the people who thought Harris is going to win is because that's the media they still consume. But actually, the real race is being fought in a very, very different type of media.
100%. I think it was really significant, and I've said this before, that the type of podcasts that Trump went on, Logan Paul's Impulsive, and obviously Joe Rogan, those things are so influential among disaffected young men, many of whom went in big and significant numbers over to Trump. But I would say that I was so stunned. Like, I had quite a lot of work to do in the daytimes, and I would do it in my hotel room with CNN on. And I was stunned, because it's like, that's a brand name I recognize, and I'm probably going to find Fox News a bit shouty, although interesting, but just a bit shouty. And I'll probably just, okay, there is no news on the hour on CNN. So I kept waiting for the headlines and thinking, I feel like I've been watching a long time and I don't know any of the things that happened. They 100% were an agent of the Harris campaign. I mean, completely. And so that point you just made about traditional media, okay, look at what traditional media published and said about Trump in the run up to this, okay? And he still won. So they are either dead or they are totally ineffective in their current form. And they have to accept that. And I did thank God so much for the BBC, because as we've discussed on this podcast before, with a lot of data, we do not have a polarised news market in any way in the same way that they do, because we have the BBC. And actually, it made me rethink something that happened in the final days of the campaign. How ridiculous would it be if the BBC endorsed an election candidate? I mean, it would be so ridiculous.
Or ITV or Channel 4, by the way.
Or any of the public service. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It would seem absolutely absurd, like sort of Rome had fallen, etc., etc. And yet, here, this is completely normal. And I suddenly thought, there was that big blow up in the campaign of like, oh, the Washington Post wants to endorse a candidate. I can't imagine who they're backing. And proprietor Jeff Bezos, who never does anything, has said, well, I don't think you should actually. And I remember thinking, okay, first of all, I do think that newspapers endorsing candidates is one of the saddest and most tragic and pathetic things in like modern media discourse at all. Everyone has a long editorial meeting and they decide who they're going to go. I mean, wake up. It's so ridiculous, okay? It's like seeing the light from a long dead star and you're like, oh, that looks pretty. Yeah, no, actually that thing died like 300 years ago. The light's just reaching us.
It's like replays in the third round of the FA Cup. You think, yeah, we used to love them, but we understand why we don't have them anymore.
Exactly, okay? So I have some sympathy with, in retrospect, with Bezos's idea that maybe a slightly more impartial media would actually be helpful, even if you're on the, say, the for want of a better way of putting it, the Democrat side. Because if you could have a slightly less polarized media and people had some form of common culture that they went to, it would be really interesting. Late night in the US, okay, that's where they have most of their political satire. Late night television, they've got a big tradition of it. It means less and less these shows, and the podcasters bizarrely mean much more and more. But these guys who front these shows, I mean, Jimmy Kimmel cried.
No,
Jimmy Kimmel
did
cried
he?
in his opening monologue.
Wow.
He said about Trump, he has a list of enemies. You think I'm not on it? I don't think you're in the top 9 million. I mean, what? What are you talking about?
I mean, you're a white guy for a start.
Yeah, the reaction was funnier than the shows. But this is a phenomenon that I first sort of thought, oh my gosh, because I've always been interested in late night. I've read a ton of books about it. I was always fascinated by those Letterman, Leno years, all of that stuff. But those late night shows used to be watched by everybody. All sorts of different voters would watch those types of shows. In that, there was that common culture. It was, anyone can collapse on a sofa late at night and watch this thing. I remember watching John Oliver's show in the week, last week tonight, in the week after the first show after the Trump victory in 2016. And it was like this whole post-apocalyptic thing. And I just thought, oh, I see. Like, you don't think that anyone who doesn't share your politics or whatever watches your show. And you're probably right. It's just assumed that no one who would think, well, actually, hang on a second, my side won.
I think, by the way, they're absolutely allowed to do that, and the generation of comedy writers who enjoy doing that sort of thing and people who love watching it. The only mistake is the category error is to think it might make any sort of difference in an election campaign, to think that those shows, to think that people taking a pot shot at Trump to that audience is going to make any difference at all. It's, by the way, a great thing to do. You have to tell truth to power. You have to, you have to pick up on things. You have to, satire still has to exist. You have to do great jokes about people. But we have gone beyond an era where the signifiers as to who is going to win an election or who is being listened to when people decide to win an election has completely changed. I mean, it's changed gradually, and now it doesn't exist anymore.
They are not on TV.
It is eroded, absolutely. Yeah. I was speaking to the person who I always think has been so far ahead of the curve on all this, a guy called Professor Alan Finlayson, who's at the University of East Anglia, who's brilliant, and for years was saying to me, it is all online. He's saying this 10 years ago. He said there's an assumption, sometimes on the left, there's an assumption that idiots are being lied to, that's how elections are won, by bad actors lying to people who are gullible. And he said, absolutely, and by the way, Alan Finlayson is a lefty. I mean, he's fairly unreconstructed, but he said the opposite is true. He said people are so desperate for actual information. That's what people want to make sense of the world. They're fed a news cycle where everything is being updated all the time, where it's always what's the new thing, what's the new thing, what's the new thing. And there's this hunger, this hollowness inside that says, no, but I want to understand the world. What are the forces that make us who we are? And that explains on two sides. One, the success of something like The Rest is History, which is two historians like doing really, really long-form explanations of things that happened a long time ago and is a phenomenon. And it also explains conspiracy theories, which is people saying to you, this is why the world is as it is. Here is a complicated version of why the world exists in the way it does. It's because people want to be told stuff. People want to be informed. And the conspiracy theorists, the people on the right and right-wing agitators have really, really taken advantage of that. And, Joe Rogan's podcasts, they're 3 hours long sometimes.
Yeah.
People in this culture where everything is quick, everything is super fast turnaround, want context. And they're being given context. And if you're not giving them context as well, then someone else is. And that's the place where elections are won now. They are not won. The Channel 4 American election show, and you have to feel for all of these channels because, they're sort of fighting a 21st century battle with 20th century weapons. And, I think the head of ITN said, what, we want people who are divisive. We do want that. No one wants to listen to someone bland. And the truth is, people want to listen to someone who has something to say, something interesting, something unusual to say, and not about the thing that just happened, but about the world, why we live in a certain world, why certain people get paid certain amounts of money, why we have elections every 4 years, why there are 2 political parties and not 30. People want to understand the context of the society they live in. They do not want to see Sean Spicer and Boris Johnson arguing with Krishna Guru Murthy. I mean, they just don't. A very small amount of people do. All of them are our age and above. But actually, if you want to influence people, you want to influence society, you want to influence elections. It is happening in a completely different place now.
I completely agree with that. And I think that the trouble for these media companies is, and you can see them doing it all already, these legacy media companies, the traditional kind of broadcasters and outlets, and news outlets actually, and publication outlets, is that they are thinking, oh, this will be like last time. We'll make a lot of money off this. The first thing that I said, I mean, I was looking in my inbox over the 12 hours after the result. I got emails, from the New Yorker, from New York Magazine, from Vanity Fair. We do this for you. Because what happened in 2016, as a little bit of a potted aside, is that legacy media companies that were really struggling then got a huge kind of Trump bump. People started to subscribe. The New York Times got like millions of subscribers. It drove subscriptions and it drove membership and it drove all the sort of things. And so companies that were sort of thinking, not that were denying that they were anywhere in the same postcode as the Last Chance Saloon, got to stay out of it a bit longer. And then they think that the same thing is going to happen again now. They think, oh, well, we must do this. These are all companies, by the way, that hate on Trump for his kind of grasping little merchandising schemes, whatever, the jewelry, the steak knives, whatever it all is, right? The second he won, they have immediately launched new products to capitalize on that despair. And at some level, I mean, that's Trump merchandise too. It may be off-brand Trump merchandise, but it is still Trump merchandise. And listen, a lot of these people think they're sort of socialists, okay? I personally am a capitalist with interventions, right? And
you're a capitalist with interventions.
With market interventions, yeah. But I recognise capitalism when I see it, and it's all these people who are launching these products and launching this stuff, thinking we're going to make some money off this, okay? So don't deny that that's what they're doing. And if they can say we do this for you, or we're here to serve you as readers, whatever it is, they are thinking ka-ching. Right?
Yeah. And by the way, this is The Rest is Entertainment. We talk about media. It's not The Rest is Politics. So we're not talking about the political aspects of the situation, what Trump is going to do, what's happening to America, any of that stuff. That's for other people who are much more qualified than we are. But what we can talk about is what role does the media play in this? What role does the media play before an election, and what role does the media play after the election? And you're absolutely right. Almost the best thing that ever happened to the New York Times is Trump getting in last time, because suddenly you feel like the official opposition. And you can see, by the way, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, you can see they know some of the stuff we're talking about. You can see they know that longer form stuff is important. You can see that BBC is putting out an awful lot of, informational films rather than just people arguing with each other. But I do think that the previous generation of news executives and news anchors had a way of doing things which actually turned off a generation from the news media at a time when people were turning away from linear television anyway. And that an election like this, that Trump obviously won, where he won the popular vote, he won 6 out of the 7 swing states as well, it is unequivocal. It's not like, oh, it was close, or he lost the popular vote, or it was stolen. At least now you think, okay, this is where we stand. This is what happened in a free and fair election. This is what people voted for. And so you start from here in terms of trying to work out why voters behave the way they behave and how they are watching the media. But you're right, very few people, I would say, are changing their vote because the New York Times comes out for Harris. Can we talk, by the way, very briefly on that? We spoke about celebrity endorsements and how they had absolutely zero impact at all. And they really didn't. Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Springsteen, Oprah, all came out for Harris, and of course they did. And it didn't and doesn't move the dial. And I think probably...
I think it might potentially move the dial, but not the way they think it does. I really felt like when I was watching Lady Gaga crying at a piano on the sort of eve of the election, this is really... Why have they done this now? Why is it... The last few days were just like all the celebrities. There were certain people that did videos, and I thought, has anyone else Richard Gere to do with it? Have they? I mean, this is, maybe he just feels he has to, but...
And it speaks again to what Professor Alan Finlayson was saying, is that people are not stupid. People understand Richard Gere can vote for whoever he wants to vote for, but it has no impact on who I want to vote for. I mean, he doesn't have a life experience that would inform why I should vote for somebody, and he doesn't have a lifestyle that would inform why I should vote for somebody. It's meaningless. I think that Taylor Swift got that. I think that Taylor Swift did endorse Kamala. She did like one tweet, but then back to where I think Taylor, more than anyone, she gets that. It's not making any difference. I'm not, so it's, I want to say what I'm doing, I want to put it out there, but I'm not going to use my power to somehow mobilize a vote, because I don't have that power, because I'm one person and I'm a billionaire pop star.
And please, can we never see this again? Can we finally accept that this doesn't work and just this endless parade? And in fact, if you would have preferred the Democrats to win, it was massively, I actually think it was counterproductive.
Oh, yeah.
This whole idea of like elites telling everyone what to do, that I think we already know and have known for quite a long time is something that people don't like. And then I've got to sit here and, take it off Gaga and Richard Gere. No, thank you. I mean, I really do think that is... we should just see the back of it for good.
Well, we get that billionaires and tech entrepreneurs want Trump to win, and we get that actors want Harris to win.
Yeah.
It's absolutely baked in. I understand if somebody feels the need to make the point, but again, it's that thing of just... Anyway, if you're sitting and going, I do not understand how he won, given everything that happened, then I think the question would be, the way you experienced everything that happened is very, very different to the way that other people experienced it. And that's because of the media landscape we have at the moment. It's because we are so siloed. It's because
it's never been more democratized, but it's never been more siloed.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of people who saw completely different television pictures to you, saw completely different stories to you. And that's why it happened. It's not like you all sat down and watched the same thing and made different decisions. You saw completely different things. And so if you want to affect people, if you want to affect the way people vote, you have to understand they're smart. You have to understand they're interested in things. You have to understand they're going to vote in their own best interests. And that's the way you have to run a campaign, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. And as I say, Professor Finlayson has said that for years and years and years. And he was a bit right and a bit more right and a bit more right. And now he's absolutely 100% right. He said, he'll write to institutions or newspapers, talk to them about TikTok and Instagram. They go, oh, we don't care. Oh, that isn't anything. And he said for so long, he said, it is everything.
Yeah.
He said, this is the thing now. This is the thing. Stop publishing papers about, perceived bias on the BBC or Channel 4. It doesn't matter anymore. This is the stuff that matters. And the good news is there are low barriers to entry in that world. There's a whole audience of people who are really desperate for content, who are interested, and you can make stuff for them and you can appeal to them. And by the way, for the arch capitalists out there, you can make money out of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of sort of going forward and what it sort of means for entertainment sort of going forward, I think Hollywood is always my favourite place for these things to happen because, they have a sort of 3-second grief period and then just think, okay, how can we make more money out of it?
Hold on, I just need to get a bit more money out of Saudi Arabia.
Well, Hollywood is interesting because I do remember there's that great line when Barry Diller tried to buy Paramount and he failed and he lost to Sumner Redstone and he just said, they won. He sent a memo to everyone involved. They won. We lost. Next. And that is sort of the level of... We talked a lot about on the podcast before about the fact that because of lots of the sort of headwinds in a way that we've been talking about now, lots of these big media companies need to consolidate and there needs to be lots of M&A activity. And Biden administration was really against that. So they're now all thinking, okay, well, will NBC come in and Comcast come in and take Warner Discovery as just one example of one possible scenario? There's many different ways that this could happen. That could cause there to be sort of editorial influence on the news operations in those. They've all got, they've got CNN or they've got NBC News, or, in the case of NBC, they have things like SNL or whatever, because it will be much more important to those people that the deal goes ahead than someone gets to do their silly little sketch on SNL or say something on the news. And you might see that there being sort of orders from the top down. Yeah, I think so. Because there are too many of these companies and they're going to have to consolidate to survive. And that's going to be, Trump will look much more favourably on them, but he may wish, because he's very transactional, for a favour in return. Yeah. And if that's, whatever it is, I mean, he's still suing ABC News, like one guy, George Stephanopoulos, individually for saying that he had been found liable for rape. And Trump says that's not the technical thing of what happened to him in the courtroom. And he's still suing, even now, he's still going ahead with it. So,
oh, God, you don't want to be sued by the president.
But then Elon Musk hates Bob Iger at Disney because Disney withdrew their advertising from Twitter, now known as X, as I can only say sarcastically. among the Mount Olympus of some of the most terrible moguls in the world. They're thinking about all these sorts of things.
I would say if I was Keir Starmer, the one great bit of news is you can rely on everyone in Hollywood. I think people are shook up in Hollywood. They really are, because I think, again, because there's a certain mindset there. I think they were surprised by what happened. I think it's damaged them. It's so many of them now want to move over here.
The artists, not
the
the executives and the
writers.
agents.
Oh, not the execs. I mean,
or the agents, because they already knew, I think.
Yeah, like they could care less.
Well, they can kind of make some more money.
Yeah, that's all they care about. But everyone else is going to come over here and make their movies here. It's amazing news for the British film industry. I have to say that.
We'll see.
Every single actor and director is going.
Will there be a big tariff on our movies, though?
Yeah, God. I mean, listen.
But listen, okay, let's talk a little bit, because you did have I Got News for You, and you were fantastic on it on Friday, and I very much enjoyed I think you said to me when we were messaging each other about it, you said no one was really in the mood to whine, which I thought was a good way of putting it.
I don't know. It's fascinating. There's a tightrope there, I think, between saying jokes that you know the audience will laugh at, an easy joke that will release people's pain, and understanding that that's what got us in this trouble in the first place. Which
a show like South Park, for instance, really avoids. That's always been equal opportunity defence, and lots of the most interesting things satire about politics entirely has come via how many series now of South Park, which is sort of, I'll be interested to see what they do with it.
But that was interesting because Roy Wood Jr. was hosting it. Roy Wood Jr. has done, The Daily Show and stuff like that for a long time. And I think that, the fact that Trump won unequivocally actually is sort of easier, because you have to take it. If you're on the side of the Democrats, you have to take it and work out why it happened and what to do next. And he was talking about the next 4 years. He said, we did 4 years of the Daily Show where it was Trump every single day, and he said, you're writing great jokes, and he's doing the most crazy stuff, and you're doing great sketches about it, and you're pointing out hypocrisies every second, and it doesn't move the dial at all. So he goes, what do we do for the next 4 years? He said is the interesting thing, because you still want to make great comedy.
Well, that's what Peter Cook. Do you remember Peter Cook? I told you when it's that famous line when he set up the establishment, and he said it was a tribute to all the political cabarets of Berlin in the 1930s, which did so much to prevent the rise of Adolf Hitler. Okay, so satire doesn't work. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. There'll always be people on the left saying, "Oh yeah, you're just making a little joke about him. That means you're normalising him." It's like, okay. First of all, you've confused the sort of object of the joke with the subject of the joke. Second of all you do is sit all day on Twitter, right? You work for Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Breaking news. You literally do this for free. You work for Elon Musk, but he doesn't pay you. Okay, that's who you are. So there's all these sort of people saying, oh, no, you can't make jokes about it. One, you absolutely can. I think some of the best, all types of creativity gets made in the decline of an empire, and whether or not you think America's just on the point of getting to its good part, or
maybe,
or whether, this kind of convulsion is a sign of something else. Lots of interesting things and amazing pieces of creativity happen in that time. So it has the potential to be a very kind of interesting, creative time, 100%. And suggesting that if you're making a joke about it, you are, normalising fascism, whatever. I mean, God, you are definitely a big part of the problem. Not just, you are. If you're thinking that you can't talk about this, you can't joke about it, you can't do anything, what are you actually doing? Is it just sitting on Twitter policing people who are doing it? Because if that's you, A, you work for Elon Musk, and B, you are 100% part of the problem. You are a talker down to.
Honestly, that's at the heart of the conversations I've had with various different academics, is it becomes evident to normal voters when they are being spoken down to. I mean, they get it.
They've definitely got the message now. Yeah,
they absolutely understand that. So I think that, the thing would be, if you want to make a difference, then there are forums out there which are not the ones that we grew up with.
Yes, and I would also say that hyper-partisan media, whilst is the norm to some degree, the less partisan you are and the more impartial you try to be, and the more you try and look at a different way. And impartiality doesn't mean having two people from really polar opposites of the spectrum arguing, because most people, by the way, are in the middle and want more information. As I said, given all the things and all the commentary about Trump that was made, and it had no effect, then the traditional media must consider itself completely ineffective in its current form, because they were all on one side, okay? So looking at how some of these other people do it, I mean, look at the manosphere, as they say. That for one reason or another, this really speaks. But I think people do regard lots of these people as relatively impartial because they are just trying to find stuff out. And whether or not you actually believe that Logan Paul or whoever it is that you're listening to is genuinely impartial, they don't give the impression of like, no, we're telling you how it is. This news is still coming down to you like stone tablets that we hand to you. And you're sort of inside the process, really. And I do think doing as much as possible to return to what was, in previous decades, a more impartial way of doing media. And it doesn't have to look old-fashioned, but it should be more impartial, because I think that the partisan level of media has done nothing for America, nothing at all.
Yeah, I think, and if you want to have Boris Johnson and Sean Spicer on your American election show, you could have had the people you're talking about who are bland and boring, who you could have had two professors who really knew what they're talking about. And I tell you what, you'd have got exactly the same ratings, which is about 350,000. So you'd have done a more interesting job and got exactly the same ratings, but maybe found a platform you can build on for the next few years. The good news is lots of people at these news organizations get this. And there's lots of people, the younger generation in those news organizations, who understand how they should be doing news now. And hopefully if something good comes from all this, it's that they become empowered. And to leave the final word to Professor Finlayson as well, whatever we talk about, image and reaching people and all that kind of stuff, he said, watch the very last minute of Trump's final speech and the very last minute of Kamala Harris's final speech. The very last minute of Trump's final speech is, I am going to cut your taxes, I'm going to raise your wages, and I'm going to protect American jobs. And the final minute of Kamala Harris's one is, we walk together into the future with hope and joy and prosperity and optimism. And he said, one's transactional, the other's not. So Trump's appeal is entirely vibes-based, but at the end, there's the retail politics right at the heart of it, and that's the message that cuts across. This episode is brought to you by Sky, where you can watch unmissable shows, including the thrilling new Sky original series, The Day of the Jackal, starring Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne and BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
She is terrific. It's based on Frederick Forsyth's acclaimed novel, The Day of the Jackal. The series is a contemporary reimagining of the classic thriller that sees an unrivaled lone assassin, the Jackal.
It's his day.
Take on one last job, putting his secret life in extreme jeopardy. He's under relentless global pursuit from secret agent Bianca. The hunter has become the hunted.
Oh, man, I hate it when that happens. It's one of my absolute favourite books, The Day of the Jackal. It is brilliant, and I can't wait to see these two do it as well. The book itself, and you can see from the trailer as well, is taut, it's propulsive, it's got everything you'd want in a great thriller.
That's right. Lashana Lynch, who, by the way, is superb in every single thing she does, plays a British intelligence officer, again, who won't stop until she has taken the Jackal down.
Eddie Redmayne plays the elusive assassin, the Jackal. Can't be that elusive if I know that Eddie Redmayne is playing him. I could work out where Eddie Redmayne is if I had to.
It's less of a good movie, though, is it? Just you sitting there with your phone trying to work out where Eddie Redmayne is.
Yeah.
It's done.
He's in Soho. But it's a real belter, and these two, I think, are going to do it justice.
Espionage, subterfuge, violence, they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Watch the new Sky original series, The Day of the Jackal, on Sky now. It's a Trump-free zone now because we're talking about I'm a Celebrity, which is back on Sunday.
Oh, no, what if they book Judd Trump?
Well, it's a bit late now. He could go in later. I think we do know the actual lineup.
We do indeed. So the BBC's biggest show of the year, of course, it's strictly ITV's biggest show of the year, is I'm a Celebrity. I think we spoke about it on our very first podcast a year ago now. And the lineup for this year is out. Shall we go through it and tell people who's going to win?
Yes. First of all, I would say that this show is such a big deal for everybody. If you just go and search the I'm a Celeb tag on the Sun's website, you will see they have already had months and months and miles of content out of this show. Yeah. Who's in, who's out, whatever. This is such a big driver of sort of engagement, and people love talking about this show. Okay, so they were going to have Tommy Fury, but he's out because he's got a fight, so he had to pull out. He would have been a great booking. I have to say, this is a very, very good lineup. I
think it's a pretty good lineup. I have to say, I think that the headline booking, and I'd love for you to talk about her, is Colleen Rooney.
Okay, that is hands down an amazing booking, right? She doesn't need to do it. Or it's always interesting when people who don't need to do it because you're thinking, why are you doing this? Okay, she's being paid $1.5 million, but that doesn't matter because, as we know, she's
most ever, I think.
I think that's the most ever, yeah. And, I've always been interested in Colleen. And I remember reading her book like absolutely years ago, which obviously she wrote with somebody really quite soon after Baden-Baden, after the 2006 World Cup, when she'd become a thing. And it was called Welcome to My World. You could tell that she had a lot of views about a lot of things. And you saw the troubles he went through, but she never really said anything.
The troubles he went through.
Well, I mean, yes.
It's a nice way of putting
the self-inflicted troubles he went through. And she never really said anything. And then when she did that Wagatha Christie thing, okay, you thought, that is the biggest marmalade dropper for anyone, okay? And the way she wrote it, the way she did everything, the way that Instagram post, it was like, my God, you are entering your imperial phase. Now, the fact she's doing this show says to me she's doing this for something for her. And it will be interesting to see what that was. That will emerge because she will be very, very clever and very careful about any of these people, by the way, who we're about to talk to, their agents, if they're any good, will have said to them, you're going to get these 3 stories. You pick the moment to say this, and that will end up on the broadcast. And you want it to end up on the broadcast, not just edited for a news story, that because some people are watching the feed the whole time. You want it to be edited on the highlight show, and you want people to say, so that was what was going on in Tulisa's life when this happened. Like Tulisa was one of the other.
Yeah, you essentially want Antoinette to go, and it's everyone's sitting around the campfire, and Tulisa has something to get off her chest, and you go, oh, here we go. This is why Tulisa's agent said yes to this.
Yeah. Well, I can see why, because I think she's been through some awful things. She was a victim of revenge porn. There was a ridiculous tabloid sting, a News of the World sting, where Mazza Mahmood, who, don't forget, in the end went to prison himself, like badgered her, in the guise of somebody else, for a number for somebody who could get him some coke. She said, I don't actually do any drugs, but she gave him this number, and it was a huge scandal. It was just like, okay, she's like 23. I mean, any 23-year-old in this country can get you a number if you want for someone.
They used to do that all the time. It's John Alford as well, who was in Grange Hill and stuff. That he did exactly the same thing to him. It absolutely ruined his
And
life.
She was a victim of revenge porn. Some really bad stuff. And I think Toulouse is a really interesting person. And I'll be really interested to see how she gets on.
So Toulouse was there. Colleen Rooney is there. Now, the winner, of course, because there is a behemoth which has strode across British popular culture for nearly 20 years now. And every single thing that anyone involved with this project does is an enormous, huge, wonderful, life-affirming hit.
Can I guess?
Yes, of course you can.
Are you going to say the word McFly?
Of course I am. Of course I'm going to say the word McFly. So Danny Jones, the drummer from McFly, is taking part in I'm a Celebrity. Now, let's take just a quick look at the potted highlights of how people from McFly have done in our big reality shows. As you know, I bow to very few people in my love for McFly and their work. So Danny Jones himself was on The Masked Singer, which he won. Dougie Poynter went on I'm a Celeb, which he won. Harry Judd went on Strictly Come Dancing, which he won. Now, Tom Fletcher went on Strictly and didn't win. So that's a rare misstep for the McFly boys there. However, I'll say this about Tom Fletcher. He's written 10 UK #1 singles. The book he wrote, The Dinosaur That Pooped Christmas, which he wrote with Dougie Poynter, has been a Christmas bestseller for 4 years in a row. It's outselling the Boris Johnson book. And
every week, by the way, we will catch you up on those.
Oh, yeah, it's not going great.
On the sadness.
And even though he didn't win the reality show he was on, his wife, Giovanna, went on I'm a Celebrity and won it. There is nothing the McFly boys cannot do. Every single time they turn their hand to anything, whether it's songwriting, whatever TV performance they do, they absolutely nail it. So I cannot see, however fascinating we're going to find Colleen Rooney and however many great stories there's going to be from people, Danny Jones, to me, feels like he's going to be the champ of this show. I
agree that he's the favourite. But, okay, Maura Higgins, who started on Love Island.
I'm not as aware of Maura Higgins' work as I should be, so do fill me in.
Well, that's good. At this stage.
Yes, 100%.
Because obviously you're a great consumer of popular culture, but if you're not that aware, and so she's got a chance to slightly break from even more of a mainstream audience, because she's obviously been big on various things, but...
Yes, I'm aware she's earned the right to be on the show, but I'm looking forward to being introduced to her.
Yeah, and I think she would be my second favourite after Danny. Who else have we got? We've got the Reverend Richard Coles.
Yes.
He is going on. Barry McGuigan.
So Barry McGuigan is a very, very interesting, very brave,
Sub in
very
for Tommy Fury.
thoughtful mate. Yes, I wonder. Yeah, it could probably give him a good
Yeah.
fight. So Barry McGuigan, I think people will like, but he's got 5th place written all over him, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. Okay, Alan Halsall from Corrie.
The Corrie / Emmerdale guy
Yeah.
usually comes 3rd.
Yeah.
I would say they're usually good, handy in a crisis. Obviously, you've got a big constituency of people who are going to vote for them anyway. But I would say if I was to bet on a top 3, I'd be going Danny, Maura, and Alan Halsall. It's interesting. So you can really probably launch a career on I'm a Celeb as well if you are. So I see that Dean McCulloch is on the list, and Radio 1 listeners will know him, Northern Irish DJ. Very charming, funny, the sort of person that if you know him, you already like him. But if you're his agent, you're thinking, I think Dean could go much bigger and much more mainstream. And I think he could really work for a big Saturday night ITV audience and that sort of thing. I always say, don't forget the bookers on this show. When people go, they need more famous people. There are big names. If you've got a name like Dean McCulloch in there, that's because the bookers have met Dean McCulloch and have understood that they really liked him. And if they put him in Jungle, viewers will really like him as well. So I think he could do very well out of it.
Okay, GK Barry, who is a TikToker, and she has a podcast which is the biggest podcast practically for the people under the age of 20. It's particularly teenage girls, sort of 13 to 20. You know exactly who she is.
Yeah, apart from The Rest is History, which is huge with that demographic as well.
I just count that out each time because
yeah.
it's understood as a given.
They should put Sandbrook in. Which of the Rest is podcasters would you like to see in the Jungle?
Rory.
Where does that cross over the TikTok audience and a big traditional linear TV audience? Can someone make if you could stride both of those things, you'd be very powerful indeed.
The research suggests that if young people don't see a young person, or ideally more than one, on the show, they will not watch it. Yes,
there's lots of people listening to this will not know GK Barry, and lots of other people, GK Barry is the only name they will know on that list.
Yeah. And then Melvin O'Doom.
Oh, I love Melvin O'Doom, who will be great. And listen, heaven knows where he'll finish, but he will be a very good presence in camp, Melvin. You really need that as well. That's your lineup. That's our top 3 as well. I would say Danny, Maura, Alan Halsall.
But can I just say that this made me that thing I was going to say about like Dean McCulloch, a rising star. Okay, this lineup particularly really shows you that reality TV is no longer like this thing where people say, "Oh, it's washed up people." Rising stars want to do it. First of all of our biggest shows on television are essentially celebrity reality TV now. Yeah. So you've got Strictly, you've got I'm a Celebrity. There will obviously be a celebrity version of Traitors. They are all...
I keep reading, by the way, that I'm in Celebrity Traitors. I keep reading that I've signed up.
Now you can read Osmond distances himself from Celebrity Traitors.
I'm not distancing myself. Maybe I have signed up.
If you have and you haven't told me, I will be devastated.
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I think it's really interesting. Reality TV is no longer low status. And for a long time, even though like you could do something great for your career on it, or you could break it overnight, people also don't think it's somewhere where you're going to break your career overnight. You're going to become washed up because you made one stupid thing, you were really hangry around the campfire and you'd only had beans and rice for a few days and you just said something and you torched your career outside the show. People no longer think of it like that. It is much more high status and it's much more, I used to have this recurring nightmare that I would wake up on reality TV. It would still be my nightmare that I would wake up like in the camp or in the Big Brother house.
Would you do Celebrity Traitors if they asked you?
No, I'd be terrible at it. No, I would find it sort of very... No, I wouldn't want to do reality TV being filmed all the day, all the time. I just would hate that.
I do.
Even though I did go to boarding school and I think on some level I'd be quite good at it.
I mean, that's a reality TV show.
Yeah.
I do know some of the names. There's some good names for Celebrity Traitors. And again, exactly what you're saying. There's some quite high end. It's people who are really kind of going, no, I think this will be a lot of fun.
Well, that's because all our the biggest shows on television are celebrity reality. I mean, even if it's light entertainment, but it's a form of reality. So those are the biggest shows. So it is no longer low status. Just look who they've got and look who wants to do it and look who sees it as a stepping stone rather than, One Last Payday or something like that.
But also, what a treat. I
Yeah.
do like this, but leading up to Christmas as well. So we've got I'm a Celebrity. We've got the end of Strictly as well. You know, it feels
The
like
cushion of traitors in January.
a cushion of traitors in
I mean,
January.
that's a big cushion.
Oh, that's a nice one, isn't it? We'll have Christmas #1 coming up as well. We'll
Yeah.
be talking about that. So I'm a Celebrity starts this Sunday. Same day, by the way, as the other great reality TV show, Mike Tyson versus Logan Paul. On Netflix, which we haven't spoken about, but maybe listen, we'll see how that.
Yeah, let's see how it pans out.
We'll see how that pans out. But again, it's exactly that thing of people saying, yeah, but it's not a real fight, and Mike Tyson's 58, and you think, yeah, people don't mind. They like the vibe of the thing.
Well, let's talk about it next week.
Yeah, let's talk about that next week. Now.
I see what you have done now.
Now that's what I call music. And now 2 things happened on the 28th of November, 1983. One, I became a teenager on that exact day. And 2, the very first ever Now That's What I Call Music compilation came out, which I bought. Had Phil Collins.
Retrospectively impossible not to see those events now as related.
Exactly. And listen, we both aged in different ways. Virgin Records launched this brand. Now That's What I Call Music. There'd been a few of these compilation albums. Back in the 70s, all we had was the Top of the Pops albums, which had scantily clad women on the front cover and cover versions of songs from the charts.
Because the rights were just too complicated to patchwork, is that right?
Yeah, and it was just cheaper to get a cabaret act to sort of do these songs. And I remember my mum just had like 10 of these Top of the Pops compilations. In 83, and funny enough, January 83, actually the thing that really launched Now That's What I Call Music was a different compilation called Raiders of the Pop Charts, and that got to #1. It's just a compilation of hits from the previous year, and a lawyer at Virgin Records said we're starting to get lots of people asking if we can put our songs on compilation albums. He said, should we just do this ourselves? Because they'd had a few huge hits. Phil Collins was with them, Culture Club, various people. He said, I wonder if this is something that we could do. And Virgin then teamed up with EMI, who had sort of a lot of the other roster of acts, and thought, well, we'll do our own compilation. They didn't have a title for it, and Simon Draper, who was the co-founder of Virgin Records, had a poster behind his desk, which Richard Branson had bought for him, because he always liked to have bacon for breakfast, and it was a poster of a chicken singing and a pig leaning over a fence saying, "Now that's what I call music." Yeah. And they were having a meeting in that room, and someone said, well, why don't we call the compilation that? So it's called Now That's What I Call Music because of a cartoon pig, essentially. So they did this. Simon Draper at the time said, I didn't really see the point in it. Why is someone going to buy a compilation album? Why are acts going to want to be on a compilation album? Anyway,
this was before we had something called playlists.
Yes,
our younger listeners. So everybody was into albums. Yeah, and the album was an art form.
And also, but we'd tape songs off the charts. With kind of play record. You'd always have a little bit. How
many did you have? I mean,
so many. But also, always with the DJ talking over the beginning of it and talking over the end of it as well. That was how.
Me and my sisters used to do it also off Top of the Pops on a VHS.
Yeah.
We had so many tapes of music which we would then just watch and then over record
and people would make playlists for each other. It was always kind of like a love token.
Yeah.
Like some poor little emo boy, no names, who would sort of spend hours and hours making a compilation of old Jesus and Mary Chain B-sides that were not going to be appreciated. But now, of course, you can have any compilation you want. But at that point, you couldn't. And Now was a sort of phenomenon straight away. It went to #1 in its second week, stayed at #1. Since then, it has sold 120 million albums. 120 million. One of the top 10 best-selling albums ever in the UK. So this is with Thriller and Queen Greatest Hits. Is Now That's What I Call Christmas. It's 5 million copies they have sold of that album. So Simon Draper saying that wasn't really for me. It has made Virgin and EMI such an enormous amount of money. Anyway, it was a phenomenon for a very, very long time. And across the years, it's a phenomenon for a very long time. Now, this week, Now 119 is coming out. Okay, Now 119 is where we've got to. And across those albums, they've gone 270 times platinum, these albums. Okay,
it's incredible.
But I will say this. Every single album had gone platinum until 2018, which is the first time that are now compilation went gold instead of platinum. In 2021, it was the first time a Now album had gone silver instead of going gold. And 2023, the first time a Now album didn't even go silver. Sales are about 25,000. So we're at now 119. I think we may not get far beyond now 125 or something, I suspect. I think this extraordinary run.
Yeah, but what a run. Yeah.
I mean, it really is amazing. And it's a part of so many people's teenage years, these incredible compilations. People found bands they'd never find before. And it must seem so weird to anyone who's under sort of 30 that this was even a thing, that somebody just putting together, it would be a 2-album kind of vinyl thing. The first 6 tracks would be huge pop songs. Then there'd be...
That's interesting, actually, that how they'd sequenced them is a real thing. I read an interview with a guy and he said, we worked out from sort of market research that the way people bought these albums is they looked at the sort of first 6 tracks and then the last 3. So as long as those were sort of all the bangers, then that was a good way of selling them. But in 1999, they became so successful that they had to be siloed off into a special chart compilation albums. And that was because like big artists in America were like, sorry, I'm losing out the #1 spot to what's this called?
Yeah, so Springsteen and Madonna would be like going to #2 in the charts, and they'd be saying to their record company, how are we #2? They go, well, because now That's What I Call Music 46 is #1. And they'd be go, what is that? Yeah, so now they have their own chart, which is the compilation chart.
Well, that's what the New York Times best-selling books had to do with self-help books, basically, because they so massively outsold like any of the great American novelists. Sorry, this is a bit of a sidebar, but my friend Andy O'Hagan was once sitting next to a publisher of these books who was like, yeah, no, you, and he said like, I could do one, I could do it. She was like, no, you couldn't. But I'm like, she she agented for people.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, tell me why, what's your idea for your title? And he just thought off the top of his head, Why Men Cry in Their Cars. And she was like, there was a pause and she said, no, you're right, I could get you $1 million for that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyway, sorry, talking about siloed charts, but the other trend, which I think we'll talk about in the future, about people sort of buying physical copies of music.
Yeah.
First of all, we know that downloads sort of pose a terrible existential threat to artists and to albums and all sorts of things like that. And there is a trend definitely among younger people, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, who want to own things. I think the fear that you don't have it in your hand. I mean, if you look at DVDs, when the DVD of Oppenheimer and the Blu-rays came out, they immediately sold out. And they were so surprised that they had to start sort of reprinting, because people want to say, oh, I want to watch that, or I want to listen to this at any time.
Yeah.
And people being unable to find things. It's interesting that people, I'm sorry that this particular compilation series is sort of on the wane, but many other things are still selling and are selling better, and are actually the sales for physical copies of things, even in the world of streaming and downloads, are going up.
Well, it's interesting, because now also gives us a sort of history of audio formats as well. The last ever Now album to be on vinyl was Now 35, which was 1996. They stopped vinyl after that. They've recently, of course, bought it back again.
Yeah, because everyone's into vinyl.
And the last cassette was 2006. They've yet to bring those back, I think. But yeah, listen, it's one of those things that everyone has grown up with. There's some weird people who've been on it, like Radiohead have been on 7 Now That's What I Call Music compilations. Radiohead.
That's amazing.
There's been everyone from Dollar to Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine, from Jesus and Mary Chain to Glenn Medeiros.
Captain Tom.
Captain Tom
like
has been on
so many
there.
others, he had an unscrupulous manager.
Yeah.
So many others before him in that industry.
There's a great playlist of it on, I mean, that's typical, isn't it, on Spotify. And I think it's 266 hours long, which is like every available song from all the Now compilations. But, you know, Simon Draper, even now, after all those things, he said, I still don't get why people are buying them. But it's made Virgin so much money, and it's brought so much joy to a lot of people. As I say, it's still going. 119 is out this week. I was seeing that Bob Marley has been on one. His son Ziggy Marley has been on one, and now his grandson Skip Marley has been on one as well. So grandfather, son, grandson. Duran, who were on the very, very first one, is there something I should know? I think it was the second track on the very first one, are also on 119 as well.
Wow.
They've literally been on the first one, and they're on another one 41 years later. So listen, absolute fair play to everyone who did it. And, you know, lovely just to be able to remember kind of all those Now compilations coming out and the various knockoffs, the Hits compilations and Shine compilations if you're an indie fan. But I just like talking about something that to everyone under 25 must just seem like madness.
Yeah.
Like, what on earth are you talking about? Because you can get any compilation you want of any music.
Everyone under perhaps 35.
Yeah.
It is madness, and yet people are going back to them.
They are, but so Now That's What I Call Music, 119 out this week. There won't be many more, so cherish it while you can, I would say. Recommendations?
Non-partisan media.
Very good. I recommend the Diplomat Series 2 has just started, and I hadn't seen Series 1, so I've just started watching it. It's so good. I'm loving it on Netflix. Strongly recommend it. I tell you what, should we get together again on Thursday for a question and answer edition?
Yes, please, Richard. Let us do this.
How can people send in their questions?
Please, to therestisentertainment@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
And don't forget the Royal Albert Hall. They've just opened up the choir seats behind us. We've sold out everything else, so the choir seats behind us are there. You will be you'll have a weird view behind us, but I promise we'll play backwards.
Yeah.
As well. So they're
it will be a 360 degrees experience in all senses.
Those have just become available, which is very, very exciting. I'm very pleased about that. But I think pretty much everything else is sold out. There's like little individual seats here and there if you fancy that. But they have opened up the choir seats, which I presume are perfectly okay. So we'll see everyone on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.